Well, McLaren has won the 2025 Formula One World Championship, the Constructors Championship at least, and to be honest, that's the only one that really matters, isn't it? Because, well, if you're watching Tech Talk, it is at least. Well, no, there's the Drivers' Championship still to fight through, but we will come back to that shortly. Now, I was looking through some of my photos the other day that I took at the very first couple of tests in the 2022 season, and I noticed something that I probably hadn't really thought about for a while. It seems like a very long time ago, but at that test, Red Bull and McLaren rolled out two cars with a very similar car concept, one that no other team at that point had really followed, though since other teams have migrated towards it. And it's really very distinctive when you look at that pull rod front suspension on the McLaren and on the Red Bull. And as we come to the end of this era of Formula One regulations, it's very interesting to see that that's the concept that has now become dominant in terms of the pace of the front of the field. However, when McLaren first introduced their 2022 car, it was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it? They couldn't really get much time on track. They were constantly trying to get the brakes to work, and it didn't look like the McLaren concept was the right way to go, and everybody was looking to Ferrari rather than Red Bull, and even Mercedes as the correct car concept. Well, times have changed quite a lot, haven't they? And with McLaren having won the last two Constructors' Championships on the trot, well, it's worth hearing about how the team have done that and what Stella, the team boss, has to say about it.
Well, the fact that we have won the Constructors' Championship, this remarkable achievement, is a great joy itself for the team, but also for Lando and Oscar. They were, and we were discussing with both of them today, they were truly happy and proud to see the happiness that thanks to the performance they have realized on track, they have delivered. And now take one race at a time, maximize what is available, make sure that we can control the pressure, make sure that we can reduce the level of stress, because we want to keep enjoying this quest to become Drivers' World Championship. This is something that we repeat to ourselves, and I also think that where is the joy, there is also performance. In 2024, it was the last lap of the last race. It was quite intense with Ferrari chasing Lando 2-3 seconds behind for the entire race. In 2025, we managed to win the championship with 6 races to go. It's just, I think, it just witnesses the growth of the team, the continuous process of development. And for us, we have reflected as a team during the celebration on Thursday on the historic meaning that winning this back-to-back title has, because we need to go back 34 years to find that McLaren back-to-back titles, and we need to invoke names like Senna, Prost. We are just humbled by being in the same sentence. A great feeling, which gives us a lot of energy for the remainder of the season.
And wow, what effective development that has been. In fact, McLaren's development rate throughout 2024 and 2025 has very much been the envy of the entire paddock. And a few people are wondering, just how is it that McLaren's technical development has been so effective this year and last year, and will it continue into 2026? And to hear what the other teams really think about this year's McLaren, well, we asked them.
Well, I think what is impressive is that they have been quick everywhere. They have been quick on circuits where you are focused on low speed. They have been very quick on circuits that have focused on high speed, which tells us that they have a very benign car. Probably with a lot of load, but I think it's not only that. I think the whole team has developed well. From what you can say from outside. To be honest, I know Andrea well. I'm not surprised that the team has taken that direction, and it's now up to all of us to try and catch them.
For sure, there is a lot of small detail in McLaren that are quite nice. They have been quite brave to do that, because there was also some reliability risk, and but they did it in a nice way, and it's not something in particular. It's a few small details that when you put all together, you say, wow, they have done very, very good job. So I think it's the total package of it more than a single detail.
Well, I mean, they obviously launched with a very, very well sorted car. They were strong in winter testing. We could see that. They were very strong in the early races, and particularly they seemed to be the benchmark at the rear overheating tracks. Now, we're obviously looking at what other people are doing, and that was used to set some challenging targets for ourselves on finding a bit more performance on those sorts of tracks, whether we can try and get the tyres to run a little bit cooler. And it is encouraging that in the recent race, some of those real overheating tracks, and Singapore's certainly one of those, where we've been able to match them. So I think we've made good progress ourselves. But if you look at McLaren, what they did really well was managing to launch with a very, very well sorted car that was very competitive, that was working well over a range of tracks. They've obviously got two drivers who've been doing a good job, and they won the constructors in the early part of the season.
It's fascinating, isn't it, to hear what other teams think about this year's McLaren, particularly that comment about risky choices in the engineering of the car. I wonder if that's a comment about the front suspension layout or something else within the car itself. And it is an absolutely fascinating little piece of insight into how teams view each other. But going back to how McLaren views itself, Andrea Stella and Zach Brown were on a recent episode of the Beyond the Grid podcast, and here is what Andrea Stella had to say about the McLaren and some of those risky choices.
First of all, the car is much better than the 2024, but the car is not better because the car changes itself. The car changes, evolves, is much more innovative because of the team. The team elevated the game, I would say, first of all, from an engineering point of view. I've said that already, the bravery from a technical perspective that went into the 2025 car was a remarkable step forward. In Mexico, we have seen the benefit in the innovation we introduced in the cooling system. There's been some decisions to innovate the front suspension, the rear suspension. Some of them really challenged our knowledge. And I say sometimes internally that now I can say that over the winter I wasn't necessarily completely calm, that we had just not gone too far in terms of the innovation. I never told Zach that was the case. I always told Zach, don't worry, it's all under control. So the car, which is a reflection of the team, I think the team, each and every one, have embraced to make a little step forward in terms of being better than the year before, everyone in their own area, which is part of our fundamental ethos.
After a super strong 2024 development race for McLaren in that tight fight with Ferrari, McLaren started out the 2025 season extremely strongly, and in fact it looked like they were going to dominate the entire season and sweep all before them. In fact, the opening races looked incredibly good for the orange, or is it papaya, cars. However, that dominance perhaps was not much more than skin deep. At least that's what the McLaren team want us to think, and this is why.
In fairness, I have to say that while it looks like McLaren was dominant, this was the case only in a few races. And I think this was the case where it was hot, somehow similar to Mexico. We have hot conditions, low grip, high thermal degradation of the tires in the race. This creates a set of conditions in which I think our car excels. But in many other situations, we were not the fastest. We got beaten. Even at the start of the season, Verstappen won Japan, he won Imola, he was pole position in Saudi, and he would have won the race if it wasn't for Oscar mastering corner one. So I think where we have been the best, as a team at least, as a constructor and as drivers, was in our consistency. We have always been there. We have been there in pretty much all conditions, while excelling in some specific conditions.
So all wasn't exactly perfect in the world of McLaren and the MCL39, at least if you ask the racing drivers. Lando Norris had a few gripes and grumbles about the car at the start of the season, and more recently Oscar Piastri has clearly had a few struggles with his orange or papaya or orange car as the season has gone on. And to understand a little bit more about exactly what's been going on there, again, the team have been quite open and discussed what it is that they're trying to fix for both of those drivers to be comfortable in the car.
I mean, ultimately what we're trying to do is get a racing driver around a particular track as fast as possible. So that means you have to have the car and the driver working in harmony. But, you know, as we know, in chasing for every drop of performance from the car, there's always some things where you're having to trade that against a little bit of the kind of ease of driving the car. So we're always working very closely with the drivers to try and understand where that limit is and exploring that. And of course, you know, it seems this year Lando's having some difficulties, but he's an extremely talented driver. He's shown he can deliver consistently and works very effectively with the engineers. So we're really just focused on trying to understand that in detail and then decide what steps there are to take, both ourselves and for Lando himself.
One of the issues that Lando Norris has discussed throughout the early part of the season was getting a certain numbness from the front axle of the car. He was unable to feel what the car was doing and be able to drive it to the absolute limit. And perhaps that's why Piastri had a slight edge on him at certain races. However, during the season, McLaren made some modifications to the front suspension, I believe the rear suspension as well, to try to give Norris slightly better feeling in the car. Now, Oscar Piastri didn't always use the same components, and the two drivers ended up continuing through the rest of the season running their cars in slightly different configurations. It's very subtle, but it can be spotted if you look really closely at the cars in the pit lane. And which one is the better and the faster solution? Well, we don't really know, but the people who do, they're not exactly saying, but they are saying it is different. Let's hear a bit more about that.
I think now it's really down to the setup of the car, and so we've added parts or options to the car now, and really they're setup options that people will take forward depending on the track, depending on the driver, and we're really out to that point where big upgrades are making a difference, and actually we're bringing options that different circuits are going to offer different amounts of performance, and we'll be trading those at each event as we move forward now rather than bigger upgrades.
And talking about those trades or those movements, obviously Oscar, I think, said that he preferred maybe the older spec when we were in Canada, when you bought the new spec for Lando. Will we see that kind of going forward, maybe a slight difference between the two?
I think we're seeing a slight difference in setup throughout the whole of the car. So it's just another thing that's slightly different between how Oscar and how Lando want to drive. So we expect those differences to continue based on how they, as drivers, are feeling at each circuit.
And on the topic of racing drivers, unusual for Tech Talk, I know, the World Drivers' Championship is not just about Piastri and Norris. There is, of course, a third driver in the mix, Max Verstappen in his Red Bull. And on a number of occasions, it's clear that Red Bull has started to best McLaren. In fact, their car development has gone on surprisingly late, and you absolutely cannot discount Max Verstappen from this year's World Championship. And that is what McLaren are slightly worried about. They've put all of their effort into next year's car at this point, and I suspect Red Bull have still got a few tricks up their sleeve, and one of those tricks is most certainly Max Verstappen.
Max is Max, and Red Bull is Red Bull. We're talking about a super champion, the reigning world champion for the last 4 seasons. So, in fairness, we have never been naive enough to say that Verstappen was not in the quest to become drivers' world champion. This has always been something that was clear to us. But ultimately, once we know it, we just, the second after, focus on ourselves. And I'm actually quite impressed by how much Lando and Oscar are able to just reduce the noise and just focus on themselves. They know that if they can extract the best of their potential, they can have very strong weekends, and they can be in control of their own destiny in this quest to become champions. If we look at Red Bull, they were winning races at the start of the season, and I think for some reason they might have lost a little bit their way for a period, and now they are coming back. We understand that they are more aware as to how to exploit the car. They have taken some new upgrades, floor in Monza, front wing in Singapore, Mercedes a front wing in Singapore. So definitely nobody is standing still. This is the nature of Formula One. It's very competitive. We will have to deliver strong weekends and maximize the potential that is available in the MCL 39.
Well, for McLaren, the development of the MCL39 has come to its conclusion. All of their efforts now being put into the 2026 car. And will that still be as strong as the last 2 seasons have been for McLaren? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. But I can tell you the car almost certainly will be painted orange, or papaya. Either way, it's going to be an interesting piece of design. However, the most interesting thing for the remaining races of this season is which of those 2 McLaren drivers is going to get the edge over the other. And to find out a little bit more about what the team think on the inside, Lawrence Barretto put Andrea Stella firmly on the spot.
There can only be one winner. What do you think is going to make the difference in the Drivers' Championship?
Well, first of all, we hope that as a team we will be able, from a reliability point of view, from an operational point of view, to offer Lando and Oscar the best opportunity for the quest to be entirely in their hands. Dependent on their talent, on their racecraft, on their determination, on how much they will be able to express the best of themselves in these final 6 races. And like I said, we want to make sure that we offer to Lando and Oscar a fast enough car to keep Verstappen under control and make sure that it doesn't become too much of a threat. And for me, what's important is that all these happens within the fairness, the sportsmanship, all the values that characterize the way in which we go racing at McLaren, and then may the best win.